Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to another episode of the Test-Driven Development Screencast. My name is Jove, and the agenda of this video is to cover the negative cases when loading the timeline. As you may notice, there is no background audio, because after I've updated the OBS studio, for some reason it's not catching the desktop audio. So we're just gonna stay without background music in this video. Hopefully they are gonna fix it for the next one. So let's see where we are. So previously we've worked on the fetching the posts when we have a post or when a friend that we are following has posts. So we cover those cases, and basically I can just get rid of that. And for now we want to cover the error cases, basically when there is a backend error and when we are offline. And basically at this moment I couldn't think of anything else, so we can start with these two, and then we'll see if something pops out in mind afterwards. We can continue. So I mean we are gonna add that. So let's see here what we have. So here we have the timeline load post test. So basically I think we just have to rename this one into load timeline test. That's gonna be a better name here. And let's check that in straight away. Oops, I did not stage the change. So that's what I wanted to do. All right. And let's go back to my studio. So we have load timeline test. That's the one. Now I'm just gonna run the tests to warm up everything and to make sure that the rename didn't break anything. It should not, but yeah, who knows. Just in case. And then while it is building, what we can do here, we can add another test case. Oops, not Java. So we're gonna add a new Kotlin class and we are gonna name this fail. Yeah, now the tests are running. Everything's fine. So yeah, new test, fail, timeline loading test. Let's close the navigation panel and start off by writing a new test. So basically what we want to cover here is like what happens when we have a, let's say, a backend error. So I'm just gonna import the assert here, the assertions, and I'll say I will need, I would expect a timeline state backend error when I do view model timeline state value. So that's my expectation. Timeline state backend error. So let's create this. Well, first that's gonna happen when I do view model timeline for and here basically it's irrelevant what I'm gonna pass, and here the view model is gonna be my timeline view model. And now to make it compile, I have to also pass here user catalog and post catalog. And now let's basically create those two. So first I need a user catalog, which can be in memory user catalog, and then a post catalog, which can be also in memory post catalog. And I think here we didn't define previously a default value. So here I have to put empty list, let's say. And finally, let's create the backend error as a new object in a timeline state here, which has to also be a timeline state. And now the test should be complete. And let's run and watch it fail, which is very important at this point of time. And basically the failure is not what we expect. It's the looper. So what we have to do here is to extend with the instant task executor extension and import that one. Now run and see. And now we have a failure that says there is just posts. The value is posts with an empty list, but we expect a backend error. So basically, what happens is when we call our post catalog and we ask for posts, it is returning empty array instead of throwing an error. So like the way to make this in-memory post catalog throw an error, like return an error so that we can handle it here. The way that I would prefer to do that right now is to actually do a little refactoring here. So basically I want to be able to stub out different post catalogs. So basically I'm thinking to emerge interface out of this catalog and then depend on interface in the view model. So then in the test, I can actually make a stub that will just return error, and then I can test that behavior. So let's do that. Let's go that path in this case and see how that's gonna go. So what we can do here is we can do a extract interface into a separate file, and I'm gonna name this post catalog, and I'll need this posts for to be an abstract function. So that's gonna be my interface, and it lives in my friend's domain post. That's great. And now my in-memory post catalog is actually a post catalog. And now back in my view model here, instead of depending on concrete implementation, I'm just gonna say post catalog. And that shouldn't break anything except the test should still the test is still failing, and it is failing for the reason that it is not actually the value that we are expecting is different. So we did a little sort of step over in this case. So basically, instead of it was not that easy to fake it till we make it to make this test green and then only do the refactoring. So in this case we do a little exception. So basically we did a refactoring while we have the failing test, and the reason why is that it's okay when you have such situation not to to continue this way. Well, like what you can do while refactoring is also you can ignore or disable. It was disabled in JUnit 5. So we can disable this test while we are doing the refactoring. But I think this refactoring that I performed now, it's not only done with the studio itself, so it is automated refactoring. I feel confident to just extract interface. It's really small thing. And meanwhile, I just make sure that only that test is failing. And additionally, I can simply revert in case I need to. Like if I break something, reverting is super easy. So I didn't do much changes. So I think I felt comfortable. Like it is okay to go this way. So now I have the interface. Let's maybe check this in first, but not check everything in. In particular, I would like to check to check in the extraction of the interface. And here, depending on the interface. And then I would say extract interface for the posts catalog. Well, extract post catalog interface. That's what I want. And now what I have the new state that I'm expecting and failed timeline loading test, but now the test is not complete. So let's actually go back here and make this test, make the stop. So here, instead of in-memory post catalog, I need a, let's say, unavailable post catalog. And that's gonna be a stop that I'm gonna keep it here in this test because it's only relevant in this very test. So here, when I'm trying to fetch the posts, I'm just gonna throw a backend exception, and I'll make this private so that it won't be visible anywhere else. And now what happens is that when I'm trying to fetch the posts, this thing here acts like as if because my post catalog actually is something that acts as a backend. So when I reach out to the backend, it throws a backend exception. And now here I have to actually handle the backend exception. So what I can do is, and that's the way that I want to represent this, the backend throws an exception or might throw an exception, and like this in-memory implementation or like my stub is throwing a domain exception that I have and I can handle myself. So then actual implementation later on that I'm gonna have that will make, let's say, real call to the backend might throw different exceptions, but I'll have to like come up with a contract that will take responsibility of changing, of mapping that whatever exception is going to be thrown into my domain exception. So that's the way I'm thinking about the things. So what I can do here is I can surround this with a try catch, and then here catch the backend exception, and I'll name this backend exception. And what I have to do here is mutable timeline state value is timeline state backend error, and that should make the test pass, and it does. So here what I will say is can handle backend error, backend exceptions. And then let's write a new test. And this time what happens when I'm offline? So an offline error, I would expect timeline state offline error to be my view model timeline state value. And now my view model is gonna be a timeline view model user catalog post catalog, and my act should be view model, timeline for, again, irrelevant. And now let's come up with the offline error. Oh, again, create an object in a timeline state. Oops. And go back to, yeah. And now the user catalog is gonna be in memory user catalog. The post catalog is gonna be this time I need offline post catalog. Again, I'm just gonna create I'm just gonna create a class that's gonna be relevant for this test, which is gonna be implement the methods, and this time it's gonna throw a connection unavailable exception. And also make this one private. Oops. I want it to be below. Yeah, that's about it. Let's run and watch it fail. It should fail for the reason that we are expecting it to fail, obviously. And indeed, it throws a connection unavailable exception. Nobody is actually taking care of it. So here we can do a offline exception connection unavailable, and we are gonna say mutable timeline state value is gonna be a offline error, and that should make the test pass. Cool. Let's now check this in and say can handle offline exception while loading the timeline. And maybe it would be better if you also reward this one. Can handle backend exceptions when loading the timeline. What did I do? How do I exit from this crap now? I don't know how to exit this. So stopped recording, copy text. Okay. Close the terminal. Then open it back. I shouldn't have done that, but yeah. And now what I can do is actually let's do it this way. Now we're better. I will rename this later, not to waste time during the recording. Let's continue. So let's make sure I didn't break anything. So fail, good. And I have this test, cool. So now I have the test, everything's fine, but here I think I have to do a little refactoring. So basically what's happening here, I have the timeline. view model which injects the user catalog and a post catalog. And here we have this try catch, but also here we're gonna have, this is a view model. This is a little bit higher level of abstraction compared to you know, like handling this, like this business logic of like handling the exception and those kind of things does not necessarily belong in the view model, because here in the view model we're gonna have also another responsibility, which is like changing the threads, and then also later on it's gonna expose some loading states and that kind of thing. So I think I feel that we have to push this one somewhere else. And that's basically what we're gonna be doing now. And also like to make consistency between what we had in the for the sign up and what we have here, I think we just have to align those a little bit as well. So first of all, I would like to extract another function out of here that's gonna be taking the value. So let's first actually duplicate this thing here, and we're gonna say val result is let me see if this is visible, if I can scroll it a little bit. And right, so that's my result. And now I can set this result to the mutable timeline state value is the result. Now I think that should still work. So I created this duplication and I can remove this part here. And now I can actually, let's make sure it works. It does. And now I can extract a function which is get timeline for a user ID. And now this, let's convert this into block body, is just returning timeline state to me. And then the try catch is inside it. So it's sort of isolated, and that's what I wanted to. So that's my first step. So what I can do, I can just check this in first. I'll say, actually wait, I need to delete these unnecessary lines here that I added only for the to make the things visible. So now I'll say extracted function to align extracted function to get responsible for getting timeline and handling errors. Good. Now what we can do, we can put this one into a collaborator. So let's say we have class timeline repository to make it consistent with the sign up repository, I think. Was it? Yeah, user repository. So timeline repository, and inside here I'm just gonna copy paste this function. And now it does not, it couldn't access the user catalog and post catalog because this is a this has to be inner class, and now it can. So at this moment the change should be of no consequence. Everything should be still working because that code is not being used by anyone. So now first I can inject this as a constructor argument in the timeline repository. And let's make this private. And here use that one. And do the same for the post catalog. And also make that one private. And now I think I can remove the inner modifier. And everything's still working. That's good. And now I can push this class away. Move nested class to upper level. And I think this one belongs to my friend's domain timeline. I think that package does not exist yet, so let's create it and then move the class there. Because it's repository, it's part of my domain, but it does belong into a package called timeline. So now this is the class, yeah, for now it is unused. I should have first called the class timeline view timeline repository get timeline. Wait. So here I would pass the user catalog and the post catalog that are coming in the constructor of the view model, and that should still work. So another way of doing this would have been to actually make this call first and then extract the class. So it's sort of the other way around doing the steps, but yeah. And I can delete this thingy here. And it should still work. And now let's check this in. Extracted a timeline repository collaborator. That's cool. And now the problem is that whenever we call the timeline for, we are making new instance of the timeline repository, which is basically a logical duplication. And now we want to get rid of this duplication. The way to do it is to push this as a constructor argument. So let's do that. So in the timeline view model, we are gonna get a timeline repository. And now we can make this one private. And automatically the user catalog and the post catalog became unused. But for now, we just leave it there. And here what we got is timeline repository get timeline for user ID and then set the result. So basically this is what we wanted here. And additionally in this view model, we are gonna have the loading state and then switching threads. That's about it. Now let's make sure that we didn't break anything. But the problem is that this Android Studio is, as we've seen before as well many times, is not importing automatically when I do this automated refactoring. So I have to import manually, just have to do import. And also in the other test case that was from the previous episode. And that should still work. And it does. And now we want to clean up the tests and also these things. So what we can do here is we can change the signature of the timeline view model constructor and basically just delete the two collaborators that we are injecting but are unused. So let's do this refactoring. And as we can see now in the test side, everything got back to normal. So we have the timeline view model where we create timeline repository, we pass the user in the post catalog, and that's about it. All the tests are still green, and it seems quite okay. That's our old test, and that's in here are our new tests, which are for the failed loading. And I don't think I can do, well, I can actually extract this one because it's sort of the same as a duplication. I can extract it as a property of the test, or I can maybe inline those. So let's see if I inline how they're gonna look like. Maybe it's gonna read better. So we have timeline view model, but let's first maybe extract this. Timeline repository is timeline repository with in-memory user catalog and unavailable post catalog. And then we have a view model with such repository. So I don't know if this reads better or this. I'm just gonna revert it as it was. Yeah. Because I think I like it this way better. So yeah. Now I think let's make sure we are clean. And what we can say here is timeline repository get timeline 4, and we can say here remove unused properties. That's great. I think that's about it. We can slowly wrap this episode up, and basically we are done with the timeline in terms of getting posts. So what we can focus on next is maybe the UI to actually represent this the list of posts for user, and afterwards we can start working on creating posts, and then actually once we create a post we have to see it in the timeline. But first I think we have to do the visual part, like to actually display the timeline. So I think that's gonna be it for this episode. Thank you so much for the time and attention. I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.